The ships came on a Tuesday morning in the year 2187. They appeared above Earth like silver needles hanging in the blue sky. There were thousands of them. The whole world stopped to watch. People stood in the streets and pointed upward. Children asked their parents if angels had come. Nobody ran. Nobody screamed. Everyone just watched with wide eyes and open mouths. The first message came 3 hours later. It was broadcast on every screen, every phone, and every radio on the planet. A creature appeared on the screens. It was tall and thin with pale blue skin and large black eyes. It called itself Ambassador Valensaurus of the Thyroxy hegemony. It spoke perfect English in a voice like honey. People of Earth, the creature said, we come in peace. We come with gifts. We come to welcome you into the family of the stars. The world leaders met with the aliens within a week. The Thyroxy were not alone. They represented something called the Galactic Concordat. It was an alliance of 12 ancient species who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They showed humanity wonders beyond imagination. They showed medicines that could cure any disease. They showed technology that could end hunger and poverty. They showed ships that could travel between stars in days instead of centuries. Earth was dying. Everyone knew this. The climate wars had killed billions. The oceans were rising. The crops were failing. Humanity was desperate. When the Concordat offered help, the world leaders wept with relief. Ambassador Saurus presented the treaty himself. He called it the Cultural Integration Accords. He explained that it was a standard agreement. All new species signed it when they joined the Concordat. It would allow humanity to trade with the elder races. It would give Earth access to alien technology. It would save the human race from extinction. There are some responsibilities, Sora said with a gentle smile. Every species must contribute to the Concordat. You will provide workers for our shared projects. Your people will learn from us by serving alongside us. In time, you will become full members of our great family. The leaders signed the treaty. They signed it in every capital on Earth. They celebrated in the streets. Humanity had been saved. The future was bright. The truth came slowly at first. Small things that did not seem important. The Concordat built processing centers in every major city. They said these were education facilities. Humans would go there to learn alien languages and skills. Families lined up eagerly. They wanted to be first. Those who entered the processing centers did not come back when people asked questions. The Concordat soldiers appeared. They wore black armor and carried weapons that could turn a person to ash. They did not answer questions. They gave orders. When people refused to obey, the soldiers made examples of them. General Marcus Webb was the first to understand. He was an old soldier who had fought in the climate wars. He read the treaty again with careful eyes. He found the words hidden in the legal language. He found the truth that the leaders had been too desperate to see. The treaty did not make humanity partners. It made them property. Every human being born after the signing was legally owned by the Concordat. They were not workers. They were slaves. The processing centers were not schools. They were sorting facilities. Humans were being cataloged like cattle and shipped to distant worlds. Webb tried to fight. He gathered soldiers who still had weapons. They attacked a processing center in Chicago. They freed 200 people for one brief moment. It seemed like resistance was possible. Then the sky turned red. The Concordat ships above Earth opened fire. They did not target the soldiers. They targeted cities. Mumbai vanished in a flash of white light. So did Cairo. So did Sao Paulo. 20 million people died in less than an hour. Ambassador Saurus appeared on the screens again. His gentle smile was gone. His black eyes were cold and empty. You belong to us now, he said. You signed the papers. You agreed to the terms. Resistance is not rebellion. It is property damage, and damaged property must be punished. More cities burned. The resistance collapsed. There was nothing left to fight with. There was nothing left to fight for. Humanity had lost before they even knew there was a war in the months that followed. The processing centers worked day and night. Billions of humans were sorted and shipped. Strong ones went to mining colonies. Beautiful ones went to pleasure houses. Smart ones went to research stations. Children were separated from parents. Husbands were separated from wives. Families were broken apart and scattered across 1,000 worlds. Earth itself was kept as a breeding planet. The Concordat needed a steady supply of workers. They needed human bodies to fill their factories and their mines and their beds. So they kept Earth alive, but only barely. Just enough to produce more slaves. General Webb was executed publicly. They made the whole planet watch. Ambassador Saurus stood beside the platform and smiled his gentle smile as the old soldier burned. "Let this be a lesson," Saurus said. "You are not people anymore. You are resources. Behave accordingly." The humans who remained on Earth learned to kneel. They learned to bow their heads and say nothing. They learned to watch their children being taken and show no tears. They learned to be furniture, but somewhere deep inside, in the dark places where the masters could not see, something else was growing. It was small and quiet and patient. It was a spark that refused to die. The Concordat had made a terrible mistake. They had taught humanity to hate. They had taught humanity to wait. They had taught humanity that there was nothing left to lose, and humanity was a very good student. 200 years passed. Generations were born and died in chains. Children grew up never knowing what freedom meant. They only knew the masters, and the work, and the pain. The galaxy was vast. Humanity was spread across it like dust in the wind, on the frozen mining world of Varix 9. Humans dug for precious metals in tunnels filled with poisonous gas. They wore thin suits that barely kept them alive. They worked 16 hours a day. When they collapsed, they were dragged to the recycling pits. Their bodies became fuel for the machines. New workers arrived every week to replace the dead on the pleasure world of Ovani Prime. Humans served in the great houses of the alien nobility. They wore golden chains and silk clothes. They smiled when ordered to smile. They did whatever their masters wanted. Some were treated like pets. Some were treated like toys. All were treated like property. When they grew old or boring, they were sold to the mining worlds on the factory planet of Calthus Prime. Humans worked the great forges that built starships for the Concordat fleet. The heat was terrible. The machines were dangerous. Accidents happened every day. The overseers did not care. There were always more humans to replace the broken ones. The masters believed they had one. They looked at their human slaves and saw only animals. Clever animals, perhaps, but animals nonetheless. They did not bother to watch them carefully. They did not listen to their whispers. Why would furniture conspire? This was their greatest mistake. Ilara Vance was born on Calthus Prime. Her mother died in the forges when Ilara was 7 years old. Her father was sold to another world when she was 12. She never saw him again. She grew up with hatred burning in her chest like a second heart. Ilara was smart. She learned to hide her intelligence. She learned to look stupid and harmless. The masters assigned her to clean the communication centers. They never noticed that she was memorizing everything she saw. They never noticed that she was building a secret archive in her mind. She collected stories. Old slaves whispered tales of Earth before the Concordat came. They spoke of blue skies and green forests. They spoke of families that stayed together. They spoke of freedom. Ilara wrote these stories on scraps of cloth and hid them in the walls. She swore that humanity would not forget who they had been on the fighting world of Krath. Slave named Dren Vasquez learned a different kind of lesson. The Krath were a warrior species. They loved to watch combat. They forced their slaves to fight in great arenas for entertainment. Dren was captured from a mining world when he was 15. He was strong and fast. The masters thought he would make a good fighter. They were right, but not in the way they expected. Dren killed his first opponent with his bare hands. He killed many more after that. The crowds loved him. The masters gave him better food and a private cell. But Dren was not grateful. Every night, he studied the fighting styles of every species he faced. He learned how they moved. He learned where they were weak. He taught these secrets to other human fighters in whispered conversations. The masters thought he was just trying to win more matches. They did not understand that he was building an army far across the galaxy. On a Thrixie research station, a woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka was considered the most valuable human in the Concordat. She was a medical genius. The Thrixie used her to study diseases and develop new treatments. They gave her access to the most advanced laboratories in the galaxy. They also gave her access to the biological data of every species in the CONCORDAT. YUK, I smiled and thanked her masters. She worked hard and produced excellent results. She never complained. She never caused trouble. And every single day, she memorized another weakness. She learned which chemicals were poison to Thrixie blood. She learned which frequencies would shatter Orvani bones. She learned the secrets that would one day kill the masters by the billions. These three people never met in person, but they found each other through a network of whispers that stretched across the stars. A miner would carry a message to a ship. The ship would carry it to another world. A servant would pass it to a fighter. The fighter would pass it to a scientist. It took months for a single message to travel, but it traveled. They called themselves the Ember Covenant. They chose this name because an ember looks dead. It looks cold and harmless, but inside, it is still burning. And if you give it fuel, it will become a fire that nothing can stop. For decades, the Ember Covenant grew in silence. They recruited carefully. They planned patiently. They stole technology, piece by piece. They hid weapons in places the masters would never look. They mapped every Concordat system. They learned every patrol route. They waited for the perfect moment. The masters continued to live in comfort. They continued to use humanity without thought. They continued to believe that slaves could never be dangerous. Ilara Vance was 60 years old when the network finally connected across the galaxy. She held a stolen communicator in her wrinkled hands. For the first time in history, humans on 1,000 different worlds could speak to each other in real time. She sent one message to all of them. The ember is ready. It is time to burn. On 1,000 worlds, human slaves looked up from their work. They glanced at their masters. They felt the weight of hidden weapons beneath their clothes. They remembered every cruelty. They remembered every death. They remembered everything, and they smiled. The masters did not notice. They never noticed anything that was about to change. The uprising did not begin with a scream. It began with silence. On Calthus Prime, Ilara Vance walked through the communication center like she did every morning. The Thrixie guards ignored her. She was just an old cleaning woman. She had been invisible to them for 40 years. They did not see her stop at a control panel. They did not see her fingers moving across the keys. They did not see her smile. The planetary defense grid went dark. Every weapon, every shield, every sensor on the entire world stopped working at the same moment. The Thrixie technicians stared at their screens in confusion. They tried to restart the systems. Nothing happened. They tried to call for help. The communications were dead too by the time they understood what was happening. It was already too late. Across the galaxy, the signal went out. It was a single word, broadcast on a frequency that only humans knew. Now, on Krath, the gladiator slaves were in the middle of a grand tournament. 50,000 aliens filled the arena to watch humans kill each other. Dren Vasquez stood in the center of the sand, facing another fighter. The crowd was cheering. The masters were drinking expensive wine in their private boxes. Dren looked at his opponent. The other man nodded. They both turned toward the masters. Every human fighter in the arena moved at the same time. They had been hiding weapons in the sand for months. They pulled out knives and clubs and chains. They climbed into the stands. The crowd tried to run, but the exits were blocked. Human servants had locked the doors from the outside. The screaming lasted for an hour. When it stopped, 50,000 aliens were dead on Ovani Prime. The servants moved through the great houses with poison in their hands. They had been collecting it for years. A drop here, a drop there. Chemicals that were harmless alone but deadly when mixed together. They put it in the wine. They put it in the food. They put it in the bathwater. The Ovani nobility died in their silk beds. They died at their dinner tables. They died in their pools and their gardens. Their servants stood over them and watched without expression. Some of the masters begged for mercy. They called their slaves by name. They promised freedom and riches. The servants remembered every cruelty they had suffered. They remembered their friends who had been sold away. They remembered their children who had been taken. They showed exactly as much mercy as they had been shown on the orbital stations above 100 worlds. Human engineers did what they had been trained to do. They maintained the systems that kept the stations alive. They also knew how to break those systems. They opened airlocks. They disabled life support. They overloaded reactors. Thousands of Concordat crew members died in the cold vacuum of space in one night. 6 million Concordat citizens were killed. The elder species reacted with rage. How dare their slaves rise against them? How dare their property fight back? They would crush this rebellion as they had crushed every rebellion before. They would make humanity pay for every drop of alien blood. Admiral Thyres Velicorn was the greatest military commander in the Thyrixi hegemony. He had destroyed rebellions on 20 worlds. He had never lost a battle. He gathered the largest fleet in Concordat history. 2,000 warships flew toward Calthus Prime. He would burn the heart of the uprising and broadcast the executions across the galaxy. When the fleet arrived at Calthus Prime, Velicorn expected to find a world in chaos. He expected to find panicked slaves begging for mercy. He expected an easy victory. The planet was silent. The cities were empty. The factories were abandoned. The streets were deserted. Velicorn sent scouts to the surface. They found nothing. No humans, no bodies, no sign of where billions of slaves had gone. Then they found the tunnels. Calthus Prime was a factory world. Beneath its surface were thousands of kilometers of tunnels and chambers. The forges needed power. That power came from antimatter cores, hundreds of them, buried deep underground. Enough energy to build a fleet. Enough energy to destroy a fleet. The humans had rigged them all to explode. Velicorn understood too late. He ordered his ships to retreat. He screamed commands into his communicator. His officers rushed to obey. But the antimatter cores were already critical. The planet was already dying. Calthus Prime exploded. It was not like a bomb. It was like a new sun being born. The light was so bright that it blinded sensors across the entire system. The shockwave tore through Velicorn's fleet like a hand sweeping away insects. 2,000 warships became 2,000 clouds of burning metal. Admiral Velicorn, the undefeated commander, died without ever giving another order. The explosion could be seen from neighboring star systems. It became a new light in the night sky of 100 worlds. On those worlds, humans looked up and saw it. They knew what it meant. They knew that the rebellion was real. They knew that the masters could be killed. They knew that everything had changed. Ilara Vance watched the explosion from a ship that had escaped before the detonation. She was surrounded by 10,000 other survivors. They had sacrificed their world to kill the enemy fleet. They had traded their chains for fire. She composed a message. It was broadcast across every frequency in the Concordat. Every species heard it. Every leader heard it. Every slave heard it. "We are humanity," the message said. "You took our world. You took our freedom. You took our children. You thought we were animals. You thought we were property. You were wrong. We remember what you did. We remember who helped. Now we are coming for you. We will not stop. We will not negotiate. We will not forgive. Look at the fire where Calthus used to be. That fire is coming for all of you." The galaxy had never known fear like this. They had owned humanity for 200 years. Now humanity owned the night, and the night was just beginning. The Concordat believed they could recover. They had lost a fleet and a planet. It was painful, but not fatal. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had crushed rebellions before. They would crush this one too. They were wrong. From the dead spaces between stars, the Black Armada emerged. These were places where no one ever looked. Dead systems with no planets. Empty voids where light had never shone. For generations, humans had been stealing parts. A piece of metal here, a power cell there. Slave engineers had hidden their work in the dark places. Now their work was complete. The first ship appeared above Varix 9, the frozen mining world. It was massive. Its hull was black as space itself. Its weapons glowed with terrible light. The Concordat defenders opened fire. Their weapons did nothing. The black ship did not dodge or hide. It simply absorbed the attacks and kept coming. Then it fired back. The weapon was something no one had ever seen before. It was called a singularity lance. It created a tiny black hole that lasted for less than a second. But in that second, it devoured everything nearby. The Concordat defense station vanished. It did not explode. It simply stopped existing. The mining world fell in less than a day. The human slaves rose up and killed their overseers. The Concordat soldiers tried to fight. They died anyway. When it was over, 100,000 humans stood on the frozen surface and watched their black ship orbiting above them. They were free. Many of them cried. They had never known what the word meant until that moment. More black ships appeared across the galaxy. There were hundreds of them. Some were small and fast. Some were huge and terrible. The largest was called the Memento Mori. It was a word from an old Earth language. It meant, remember that you will die. The ship was 5 kilometers long. It carried weapons that the Concordat could not understand. Scientists who studied its attacks went mad trying to explain what they saw. General Dren Vasquez commanded the Memento Mori. He had once been a slave who killed for entertainment. Now, he was the most feared warrior in the galaxy. He did not fight for glory or power. He fought for every human who had ever died in chains. Every battle was a funeral. Every victory was a prayer. Dr. Yuki Tanaka did not command ships. She commanded something worse. She had spent decades learning the weaknesses of every Concordat species. Now she used that knowledge. She created plagues that only killed the Rixi. She made poisons that only worked on Orvani blood. She designed weapons that targeted specific species and left everyone else alive, the Thyrixi. Homeworlds fell silent as sickness swept through them. Billions died choking on their own blood. Their advanced medicine could not help them. The plague was designed too well. It knew exactly how to kill them. Some called Yuki a monster. She did not argue. She simply asked them how many human children had died in Thyrixi laboratories. How many human bodies had been cut apart for research? How many screams had been ignored? She did not wait for an answer. She already knew. Elder Elara Vance coordinated everything from the flagship Earth Remembers. She was 90 years old now. Her body was weak. Her hands shook. But her mind was sharp as a blade. She saw the galaxy like a game board. She knew where to attack. She knew when to retreat. She knew exactly how to break the Concordat piece by piece. The war lasted for 3 years. Each year brought more victories for humanity. The Krath warrior world fell when their own gladiator tradition was turned against them. Dren challenged their greatest champion to single combat. He killed the alien in front of the entire planet. By their own laws, the Krath had to surrender. The Ovani pleasure world burned. Human servants opened the gates and let the Black Armada in. The nobles, who had treated humans like toys, found themselves treated the same way. Many of them begged for death. Some received it quickly. Others did not. The smaller Concordat species began to surrender. They had never supported the enslavement. They had just been too afraid to speak against it. Ilara accepted their surrender. She did not punish them. She only made them watch as the true masters fell. But the Thyrixi refused to break. They were the oldest species in the Concordat. They had written the treaty that enslaved humanity. They believed they were superior to all other life. Surrender was unthinkable. They retreated to their throne world, Thyrix Prime. It was the most defended planet in the galaxy. 100 warships guarded its orbit. A massive shield covered the entire world. Weapon platforms floated in space like angry stars. The Thyrixi believed it was unbreakable. The Black Armada gathered in the system next door. 500 human warships. The entire might of freed humanity. Dren Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Memento Mori and looked at the distant light of Thyrix Prime. "They think their walls will save them," he said. Elder Ilara's voice came through the communicator. She was too old to leave her ship, but she was still in command. "Walls only delayed the inevitable," she said. "We have waited 200 years. We can wait a little longer." The siege began. It would be the final battle of the war. Everyone in the galaxy knew it. When Thyrix Prime fell, the age of the Concordat would end. A new age would begin, an age written in human fire. Dren smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had killed for his masters and was now ready to kill the masters themselves. "All ships," he said, "prepare for attack. We end this today." The Black Armada moved forward. The final battle had begun. The siege of Thyrix Prime lasted 19 days. Every day, the Black Armada attacked the planetary shields. Every day, the shields held. Every day, the Rixi commanders sent messages of defiance across the galaxy. They said humanity would never break through. They said their technology was too advanced. They said their walls were eternal. Every night, the shields grew weaker. The human ships did not use brute force. They were smarter than that. They found the frequencies that hurt the shields the most. They targeted the power stations that kept the shields alive. They were patient. They had learned patience in 200 years of chains. On the 15th day, the first shield generator failed. On the 17th day, 3 more went dark. On the 19th day, the great shield flickered and died. The Thyrixi fleet fought bravely. They were skilled warriors. Their ships were powerful, but they were fighting against something they could not understand. They were fighting against 200 years of hatred. They were fighting against the memory of every human who had ever died as a slave. General Dren Vasquez led the attack personally. His ship, the Memento Mori, cut through the Thyrixi formation like a knife through paper. Where it went, enemy ships died. The Singularity lance fired again and again. Each shot created a tiny black hole that swallowed everything nearby. The Rixi captains watched their comrades disappear and felt fear for the first time in their lives. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Thyrixi fleet was gone. Broken ships floated in the darkness. Escape pods drifted among the wreckage. The Black Armada did not fire on the pods. They wanted survivors. They wanted witnesses. Elder Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of the Earth Remembers. Medical machines kept her alive. Tubes fed her body. Screens showed her the battle. She was 97 years old. She had been born in chains. She had never breathed free air. She had never felt grass beneath her feet. She had never seen the sky of Earth. But she had seen this. She had seen the Masters fall. A message came from the planet below. A face appeared on the screen. It was old and pale blue with large black eyes. It was Ambassador Valensaurus, the same creature who had smiled while humanity signed away their freedom. The same creature who had watched General Webb burn. The same creature who had called humans, animals, and property. He was on his knees. The Rixie soldiers held him in chains. They were surrendering him to save themselves. It did not matter. Nothing would save them. Bring him to me, Ilara said. They brought Saurus to the bridge of the earth, remembers. He was forced to kneel before the old human woman. His black eyes showed something new. Fear, real fear. The fear of a creature who finally understands that it is going to die. Why? He asked. His voice was weak. What do you gain from this? Your dead are still dead. Your suffering is still suffered. Destroying us will not undo anything. Ilara looked at him for a long moment. She remembered her mother dying in the forges. She remembered her father being sold away. She remembered every friend who had been worked to death. She remembered every child who had been stolen from its parents. You ask what we gain? She said. Her voice was calm. We gain nothing. You are right. Our dead remain dead. Our centuries of pain remain painful. Nothing we do will change that. She leaned forward. Her eyes burned with cold fire. But you asked the wrong question. You should have asked what you have lost. And the answer is everything. Every world that watched us suffer and did nothing will remember this day. Every species that thought us animals will see these flames when they close their eyes. For 1,000 generations, when the galaxy looks at these stars, they will remember that humanity was here. They will remember that we endured. They will remember that we rose. And they will remember that we are never to be taken again. She turned away from him. She did not care about his response. He was already dead. He just did not know it yet. Begin the final operation, she said. The Black Armada had prepared something special for Thyrix Prime. They did not want to simply destroy the planet. They wanted to make a monument. They wanted to leave a mark that would last forever. The Memento Mori moved into position above the planet. Its main weapon began to charge. This was not the Singularity Lance. This was something different. Something that had never been used before. Something that human scientists had designed specifically for this moment. The weapon fired. A beam of impossible light struck the center of Thyrix Prime. The planet began to shake. Cracks appeared across its surface. Light poured from the cracks. The whole world was screaming. Then it collapsed. Thyrix Prime did not explode. It folded inward. It fell into itself. It became smaller and smaller and denser and denser. The process took only seconds. When it was over, the planet was gone. In its place was a black hole. But this was not a normal black hole. Human scientists had shaped it carefully. They had made it stable. They had made it visible. The event horizon glowed with radiation. It was a wound in space that would never heal. A scar in the fabric of reality. From 1,000 light years away, you could look up at the sky and see it. A dark spot surrounded by a ring of fire. A permanent reminder of what happened when you enslaved humanity. Ilara Vance watched the black hole spin. She felt the machines keeping her alive begin to fail. Her heart was stopping. Her lungs were filling with fluid. She did not call for help. She had done what she needed to do. She had seen the Masters fall. She had made sure the galaxy would never forget. She smiled. "Key, we are free," she whispered. Then she died. The war ended that day. The remaining Concordat species surrendered completely. They had no choice. They had seen what humanity could do. They had seen the fire in human eyes. They knew that any resistance would only bring more destruction. 300 years have passed since the fall of Thyrix Prime. The black hole still burns in the night sky. New species look up at it and ask what happened. Their elders tell them the story of how a species called humanity was enslaved, the story of how they rose, the story of how they made the heavens. Remember, Earth is free now. It is green again. The climate has healed. Humanity has rebuilt. They have joined the galactic community as equals. No one treats them as animals. No one treats them as property. No one even thinks about it, because everyone remembers what happened to the last species that tried. There is a memorial on Earth. It is called the Memorial of Chains. It stands in the place where the first processing center was built, where the first humans were sorted and shipped to their masters, where the slavery began. On the memorial, there is an inscription. It is written in every language that humanity has ever spoken. It is also written in Therixi, and Orvani, and Krath, and every other language of the species that once thought they owned the stars. The inscription says, "They thought us broken. They were merely teaching us how to break worlds." Below that, there is another line, smaller, simpler, but perhaps more important. We remember, we endure, we never kneel again. And in the night sky, above the memorial, the black hole that was once Therix Prime continues to burn. A light that will never go out. A warning that will never be forgotten. Humanity remembers. Humanity endures. Humanity is free forever.